Fab. Well, look, thank you for having me. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to tell a story that really started around 3 years ago. And I was walking out of my subway station here in London, and I met eyes with a homeless man. And truth be told, a homeless man that I had walked past dozens of times. But that day I decided to stop. I decided to have a conversation with this guy. I remember the first thing he told me was that he would sit there on the steps because there was CCTV, and that those cameras made it less likely that he would be beaten up. He was an Irish guy, mid-40s, a big beard. I remember him telling me that he had been out of work longer than he could remember. And over the course of a few months, we got to know each other. We became friends. I would bring him cups of coffee. When it was getting cold, I would bring him pairs of thermal socks, these tiny little gestures. I remember one time he just disappeared for maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. And I was worried about him. But then suddenly he reappeared, but he looked totally different. His big beard had gone, and he looked older, like 10 or 15 years older. In fact, he looked terrible. And I went up to him and I said, "How have you been? What's going on? Where have you been?" And he sort of is still sat there on those steps, and he just sighs and goes, "I've been in hospital. I had a heart attack." So we speak, and I walk home to my apartment. And as I'm walking home, I'm just so frustrated that not only have I failed to help this man, but he's in a much worse position than when we first met. And so I asked myself a question as I'm pounding the pavements back to my apartment. What could I have done? What should I have done? What would have made a real difference to this man's life? And it was pretty clear to me that it wasn't another cup of coffee. It wasn't a pair of socks. What this guy needed was the skills, the confidence, and the support to get back into work so he could provide for himself, so he could buy himself the coffees, the socks, the 100 other things that we all need in our day-to-day lives. Now, of course, that was going to cost more than a cup of coffee. But I thought, what if we all just chip in? What if we could crowdfund effectively smart investments into people's futures? What would that look like? So I knew really nothing about homelessness, but I began to read as much as I could. And I met with as many homeless people as I could, people in different stages of homelessness, people who are on the streets, people living in homeless hostels, in women's refuges, people at risk of homelessness, people working in charities and nonprofits, all the way from frontline workers to the chief execs. And I basically came with this question, could we crowdfund training and skills for homeless people and then support them into work? And about this time, I learned another thing. I learned that for every one person we see in London on the streets, there are about 30 people who are sheltered in some kind of accommodation for homeless people. And so I thought, well, look, maybe we can start with that group because they have some fundamental stability in their life. So about that time, a charity says to me, "Hey, Alex, you should meet Tony." And I say, "Who's Tony?" And she says, "Oh, he lives in a homeless hostel in South London and he wants to become an electrician." I say, "Great, I'd love to meet him." So off I go down to this hostel and I go in, and it's cramped. It's not a nice place. It's not a place that the kind of place that I've spent much time. It's in fact the first homeless hostel I've ever been inside. And I sit across the table from Tony, and Tony has been out of work 21 years. He's spent a lot of his adult life in prison. He's been a drug addict. He's been an alcoholic, and he's estranged from most of his family. Unsurprisingly, Tony is not in the best frame of mind. And so I sit there and I say to him, I'm starting this new thing called Beam. And we want to raise money to help train people like you who are experiencing homelessness and then support you into stable work. What do you say? And Tony says pretty much nothing. This whole meeting, apart from one time he says to me, I don't understand. I say, what don't you understand? He says, I don't understand. Why would anyone help me? So I don't really know how to reply to that, but I say something like, well, look, I think there's a load of people out there who do care about you and who do want you to succeed. And I'm prepared to give this my best shot. And if you are too, let's just see where we can go together. So off me and Tony go to this training center in London where he would learn to become an electrician. And we meet the man who would teach him to become an electrician if we can raise the money for his training. And then I pick up the phone and I start speaking to some journalists. And I say, hey, I've got an interesting story here. There's this homeless guy who is crowdfunding to become an electrician. What do you say? And it becomes a pretty big news story. This is Time Out, a big magazine in London. He's covered here on Sky News. He's on the BBC News about 3 times. He's in The Guardian. He's in the Independent, the Evening Standard, and he's covered in about 10 countries around the world. And what happened after that? The money comes in. It's about £4,000 for Tony to get his training as an electrician. Off he goes. Here is him, photographed in his training center. He gets his electrician qualification. He gets a job working on building sites in London as an electrician. He starts progressing, earning more money, moves into his own home, is reunited with his family. This is him here. And 9 months later, his life is just indescribably better. And we're sort of left thinking, that was not easy, but that was also not incredibly hard. What if we could repeat that 10 times or 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times? Wouldn't society be fairer if that were the case? Wouldn't we be making better use of the potential in our society? And wouldn't companies have new access to these individuals' talents? So for the last couple of years, that's really what I've been working on. And this is where we've got to today. So this is our website at beam.org. And here you can see that through Beam, 192 people have started work. And all of these individuals are homeless or were homeless in London. They are referred to us by nonprofits and by charities and by government. And here you can see they're doing different things. This is Arta, who started work as an electrician as well. Paige is a healthcare assistant. Sometimes we use these avatars if people have particular risk issues in their life. So typically the reason for that is it's a woman living in a refuge who's been a victim of domestic abuse, and sadly there's someone out there who might want to do her some harm. So we don't use any photos in those situations. Terry becoming a gas engineer, Yasmin becoming a support worker, a beautician, a bricklayer, a health trainer, and all of these other different things. And if we click onto them, let's pick Denier. We can learn much more about that individual and their story. So here you can see that Denier raised £2,302 from 128 people. There is a story section to all of our campaigns. So social media has, in many ways, not given the voice that many people thought it would to marginalized people. If you turn up with power and influence and money onto a social media platform, it tends to give you more influence. And we see our job as actually amplifying some of these more marginalized voices. So that's where the story section comes in, and we support each individual to present themselves in any way that they wish to. Then here's a section of supporters. So here are the individual people all around the world. People have supported people on Beam from 56 countries and counting. And these messages are so important in terms of boosting people's self-esteem, showing to these individuals that people care about them and their lives have value. And there's loads and loads of these. There is a budget breakdown. So this breaks down the exact barriers to employment for each individual. And you can see it's personalized. So we have driving lessons, laptops, theory tests, and so on. Here are updates. So the little update showing that the money has been raised. Oh, I'm not logged in. And then at the bottom, we provide a timeline, and finally some more information on the organization that referred Dinir to us, on the caseworker at Beam who is looking after Dinir, and on the qualification. And so Chloe is an employee of Beam's, and each person who is using Beam's website is allocated a caseworker like Chloe to support them on their journey through the training, into work, and then remaining in work as well, because making sure that people are well settled is super important. And the final stage is that once people are settled in their work, it's up to them, but they very often choose to donate back through the platform. Maybe it's only £1 or £2 a month, but despite that, they are becoming the next generation of Beam supporter. They are transitioning from someone who was in need of help, in need of support, to someone who is supporting others. And at Beam, we fundamentally believe that there is no difference between me and Sean or Stellian or Michaela or Christiana or Jolante or Rashidat or Tommy or any of these people. All of us are the same. All of us need some help from time to time. So you can see it's very transparent. We also provide a lot of transparency on the platform. And this is what we call our transparency dashboard at beam.org/transparency. And this is live data coming off of our platform, information on the supporters, so the people donating on the crowdfunding platform, on the campaigns. You can see 100% of them have been funded. On average, they take 19 days to fund. On donations, also transparently showing people who've come off of the service, because of course, it's not going to work 100% of the time. Usually the reason why people come off the service is because they may have some kind of relapse to drugs and alcohol. People need to be abstinent for 12 weeks before joining the service, but of course, not 100% of people are going to be able to stay on that path. And then we have information on career paths and diversity and gender and ethnicity. But then we go a little further still. We provide impact on a per person basis. So if you start using the Beam platform to support homeless people, then you can see how they are getting on one place, which we call your impact page. And here we can see the people I've supported who have started work. We can see the people who are job hunting and so on. Now, just finally, I want to give a couple of anecdotes of people who I've worked with and who stick in my mind. So Davina is an amazing and inspiring young woman, a woman who went through a lot of hardship and experienced different forms of abuse and ultimately became homeless. And she used Beam to start work as an accountant. That's a job that I think it's fair to say many people might say should be beyond the dreams of someone who is homeless. And we think that's nonsense. And what we're seeing at Beam is that these individuals who have so long been neglected, who have had so little opportunity for so long, have enormous potential, and we just need to give them the self-belief and the tools to get there on their own. And then Stephen. So I told you about the time that I went to my first homeless hostel. That's where I met Tony. But in my second homeless hostel, I met this guy called Stephen. And I explained how Beam would work. And this guy says to me, "This sounds great, but it's not for me." I say, "Why not?" He says, "Oh, well, I'm still actually smoking weed." I say, "Well, how long have you been doing that?" And he says, "Oh, a long time." So I say, "Well, look, you're right. You know, this isn't right for you just now, but you seem like a great guy and we would love to help you. But first you just need to get clean." So I walk out of that hostel. I never expect to hear from this man again. But 6 months later, for the first time in years, he's now clean. He's been clean for several months. He joins the platform. He raises the funding he needs to become a digger operator from 404 people. And he gets back into work, and here he is in his digger. So that's a little bit about Beam. Thank you for listening. Probably many of you are towards the start of your own careers, and you are thinking where you will be in 5, 10, or maybe even 20 years time, and you don't know, and that's fine. And in a way, that's a great thing, because I think life is an adventure and should be an adventure. But I think one thing that we get wrong when we think about work as a society very often is that we put people into one of two boxes. We put people in the box of, you want to work and good on you. And we put people in the box of, these people don't want to work. These people are good for nothings. These people are parasites. That's not the real division. The real division is between people who have hope and people who do not have hope. That, we think, is the division. And so our job is really to provide hope to these individuals. And that fundamentally is why it's resonating with people, because it is giving them a reason to move their life forward in a new direction. It is giving them hope for a better future. And sometimes I feel that there is a difference when it comes to how different people will pursue their career objectives. There are some people, maybe some of you, maybe not some of you, that for whom succeeding in your career objectives is going to be like climbing a hill. And you've got to get to the top to get where you want to in your career. And that was what it was like for me. You know, I'm climbing a hill. It's hard work. It goes on a long time, but it's fundamentally pleasant. It's fundamentally pleasant. And I can stop and I can admire the view. But I'm one of the lucky ones. For many people, like the kind of people that we support at Beam, going where they want to go to with their career is not climbing a hill. It's climbing a mountain. It's climbing a mountain. And it's dark, and it's rainy, and it's slippery. Now, for too long, we've said to those individuals, here's a sandwich, and here are some flip-flops. Good luck. I'll see you at the top. Is it surprising that not that many people get there? So as well as thinking differently about those groups, we need to make sure that we are equipping them with the best tools, the most advanced technology that can allow those people to make that harder ascent. These are the tools that we would want for ourselves, right? If we were climbing that mountain in the dark. And that's one of the things that I'm so excited about Beam, is that we are putting technology into the hands of these individuals for the first time. For the first time, smartphones in wealthy countries like the US and the UK are almost ubiquitous. And a key part of our service is giving these individuals the hardware, but also the software to progress their lives to the fullest extent possible so that they can be amazing. So that's a little bit about Beam. I am super excited that we're going to be working together on a little collaborative task. And this is something that's really close to my heart because I started my career in a big corporate law office. And when I was there, it always struck me that there are so many thousands of people who wanted to give back and to contribute, and that was actually a difficult thing to do, despite the resources of that organization. And then some years later, I was running a technology company, a much smaller company. And I was thinking, and people in my team were thinking, how can we give back to the community? How can we do good? And in many ways, it was hard. Even those years later, it was still really hard to help people. And so this is my challenge to you. We have all of these people within companies in your local communities who want to support disadvantaged groups. And within your communities, we also have far too many people who sadly need their help. How can we connect the two? Now, here are some of the ways in which help could be provided. They can provide mentorship. People in companies can help people with resumes. They can provide interview training and a bunch of other things. And here are some of the obstacles or the barriers. People in companies might not have specialist training. They're not going to be available 24/7. They might not be available for long periods of time at all, because it might just be 1 or 2 volunteering days a year. And this is why this problem matters more than ever. People experiencing homelessness have suffered disproportionately with COVID-19. They are much more likely to suffer from health problems. They're much more likely to be vulnerable with their mental health, their physical health, and they're much more likely to struggle to latch on to new opportunities in the economy as the economy recovers. So the ability of companies to help these groups is greater than ever, and the need for that help is greater than ever. So start small and think about your local area. Think about the types of companies in your local area, the types of individuals needing support in your local area. What would a plan, what would a product, what would a strategy look like to connect these two groups so that mentorship and professional support can flow from the companies to the individuals for incredible mutual benefit?